To the Mamer Vavrahom Zaken Bayamim, which the Rebbe said in Shabbos Parshas Chayisoro, Mevorchim HaChodesh Kislev in h'tshmo Mem Vav. And later on, this Mamer was published, Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Mevorchim Kislev h'tshmo Mem Vav. This is a little bit of his different. There's no Oisius here. It's a little bit of a shorter mimer, and it was published immediately after that Shabbos. He said on the Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos already was printed, Muga by the Rebbe, and then printed. Avraham Zaken, Bo Bayamim. So Avraham became old and coming in days. Maybe Bazek Kveit Kedushas Admur Marashab Nishmos Eiden. So on this, the Rebbe Rashab in the Shmos Eden brings down on this pasuk in the Mamer Bal Yom HaYiledes the Chof Cheshvan. He was the birthday of Chof Cheshvan. This Shabbos Parshas Chayisora followed Chof Cheshvan, which was in the weekdays. The Shabbos after sort of includes all happenings of the week. So since Asher b'Shabbezu nifal ha'inyan devayichulu hashamayim. So after Chav Cheshvan being in the middle of the week, and vayichulu means that they, when it comes Shabbos, the all of the things conclude that took place during the week. B'chol yemais hashavua sha'ovar, in all the days of the week that passed. Koilel hayom de Chav Cheshvan, which includes the day of Chav Cheshvan. So the fact that his birthday was on Chav Cheshvan, this is the Shabbos that follows, that's a connection that makes this Shabbos connected to the Baal HaElula. So in the Mamer, Baal HaYom HaEledes. So the Yom HaEledes, the Rebbe Rashab in the Mamer, B'mamore HaPosik Zeh, Mamer on this Posik, and he said it in Shabbos Parshas Chayisora in the year Tofrej Nun Daled. So, and this is in Sefer Amorim that it brings down, which is what it is based on. So he said, Masha Omru Razal B'Gemara. So he brings down over there the Rebbe Rashab in that Maimer that he said brings down Masha Omru Razal B'Gemara B'Medrash, that which our sages of blessed memory said in the Gemara and in the Medrash. The Ad Avraham Loy Hoyo Zikna. Till Abraham, there was no thing as old age. Basically, people could not be distinguished by age. People didn't age. Also Abraham, so then Abraham came, Uboy Rachami, and he asked for mercy. He asked Hashem, V'havi Zikna. And then there became old age. Shenem Avram Zokin. People would just die, and people would not know, as we'll see in a minute, two people, who is the father, who's the son, who needs respect, who needs to be respected more. So the Pasuk Avram Zokin says that this is his accomplishment of his prayer that he asked, and that when old age became, that's why Avram Zokin, Avram became Zokin, he accomplished that being Zokin. The problem is that we find the idea of Zaken before Yitzchok was born. The pasuk says that Sarah and Avraham were skenim boim bayomim, so they were already talked about Zaken. This is the pasuk that we're talking in Chayis Sarah, is when Abraham is going to send the shlichus to Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. This was after Sarah's passing, as we read in the beginning of the parsha. But before Yitzchak was born, it already says, so frag the marsha, maybe kushasa marsha vayifei toyar. So he brings the question of the marsha. And the yifei toyar shariksiv lifnei, but it's already written earlier, Avram's Kefsaras Kenim Boim Bayomim, that Avram's Sarah was Zaken boy Bayamim. Uma hoyu achidush achshav b'vakoshes Avraham. So what was the novelty now that Avraham asked and he got the level of Zikna? It's already before says that they became older. Umevi al zeh tirutzam, and he brings down their answer, the answers of the Maharsha Yifei Toyar, but sheklalusay echad hu. It's really one general answer. There's only in the details there is in this matter there's differences, but generally, what is the general theme of their answer? Both of them that yes, it was elder before, but the toichen bakoshas Avram hoyo that the contents what Avram's request, the rachman that he asked Hashem was shahazikna tia nikeres yoser, that it should be a more recognizable. The elder should be more recognizable. The lifnei Avraham, before Avraham, in av shehoya inyan hazikna, even though there was the idea of old age, mikol mokoim lo hoya niker hahefresh ben tzoyer lezokin. So there was zikna, but you could not tell the difference between young and old. You couldn't tell. There was a difference. It's not the pshat that the elder were at the same level as when they were young, but people couldn't tell the difference between young and old. Ubikesh Avram requested shetiya hazikna nekeres, that the old age should be a recognizable. Kiloshin hamedrash. This is as the language in the medrash. Amar Lefonov, what Hashem said, what Avram said before Hashem, Riboin ha'olamim, master of the worlds. Adam u'bnoi nichnosim lamokoim, a man and his son enter a place, vein Adam yidei limim mechabed, and a person doesn't know who to honor because he doesn't know who's the father, who's the son. It's not recognizable. Ubefrat im cluster pneihem doimer, especially if they are lookalikes, and you can't tell who's older, who's younger. So who are you going to honor? Because it used to be Gemara Shom Lagabe Avraham Yitzchok Atzmam, as finding the Gemara over there with regards to Avraham Yitzchok himself. Sheklaster Panov Shul Yitzchok Hayodem El Avraham, that the look on the face of Yitzchok was similar to Avraham. So, as we read in the coming parsha, that we read in Mincha, in the parsha's Toldos, ve'ele Toldos Yitzchok ben Avraham, Avraham hoilides Yitzchok. So Rashi explains over there, what does it mean, Eile Toldos Yitzchok ben Avraham, and the proof that Yitzchok is Avraham's son, in which the people would make fun and say that he's not really Avraham's son because all these years Rivka didn't have, Sarah didn't have any children, and now she has this child. They didn't believe it's Avram's child. So the pasuk says, Avram hoilides Yitzchok. Pirish Rashi, Shakodesh Baruch, and Rashi explained this, that the Abish that Sor cluster Ponov Shel Yitzchok, he formed the look of the face of Yitzchok, Daimel Avram should be Avram, Vahidu HaKol Shavram hoilides Yitzchok. So everybody would testify, Avram gave birth to Yitzchok. Yitzchak ben Avraham, because it's obvious that it's Avram's son, because he looked alike. So since Avram and Yitzchak looked alike, how is the people going to know who to honor, who's who? So this was a request, that immediately should be recognizable. That Avram is older than Yitzchak. The Zeu Achidush Bevakosha Zu, and this is the novelty in this request, Amashakosu Avram Veskei Sar Zaken Boim Bayamim. Avram and Sar were elder coming in days. The Hosam Loy Hoyo Niker Uboiled Behem in Azikla. Over there they became older, and the physical, the bodily changed to older age, but it wasn't recognizable. So over there, the Hosam Loy Hoyo Niker Uboiled. Bahaminyan Hazikna. It wasn't recognizable. It didn't stand out. It didn't protrude the idea that they're older. Mashenkin out there Bakoshes Avraham, as opposed to the request of Avraham, Nifal Shinui Boiled Beponim Shel Zkenim. So this impacted a protruding change, an obvious change in the face of elders. Hainu, that is, Hein Shinui Boir Haponim, both a change in the skin of the face, Al Yidei Akmotim V'chulu Knechim, through the lines on the face, Shebeir Haponim. Those are the wrinkles that older people have. The Inyan Zeh Ugam Besora Benoshim. And this idea that there was changes also is in by Sora, by women. Al derech moshel, by way of example, Achre beloisi hoisoli Edna. After I withered, that Sora withered means that she was signs of her old age. She didn't believe that she would be Edna, that her skin would once again be refined as of a younger woman. Vehein hashinui. So this is on the face, and by women it's expressed also that the skin and the becomes withered as bloisi hoishel Edna. And there's also a change. Vehein hashinui besidus. There's also a change in the hair. Sheberoish, in hairs of the head. Ubezokin eitzel ha'anoshim, and by the beard by men. Dav shesidus hazokin yesh nom kvar b'tzoy liyamim. Although hairs of the beard exist, even one who is young age, ki ha'haloche, as the haloche is, sheben esrim shonim ismalis harazokin, that once a person is 20 years old, is filled, the beard here is filled. There's also a change in the color of the hair. Is the novelty that takes place through old age is the color of the hair. Shesar hazoke nasalova, the hair of the beard becomes white. Okay, the is b'medrash, as we see in the medrash. Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaAvraham, and Hashem says to Avraham, Bo levush levushi, come put on my garment. When the pasuk says Avraham Zaken Bo Bayamim, he says, put on my garment. What is levushi? Avraham Zaken Diksiv Atik Yoimin Yosef. So that's Bo Bayamim, the ancient of days, Baba Yomim, from all that's Hashem. Yosef sat, Levushe kitlak chiver, his garment was like white snow, Vesare Eshek Amar Nekei, and the hair of his head was like clean wool. And that represents V'haine Inyan Libun Hasaides Avraham. And that's the whitening of the hair of Avraham. That is the garment that he put on then, representing that he put on the garment of Hashem, that he got white hair. The white hair was the garment of Hashem. So this is a change by Avraham by the beard. Ukshem shu be'inyan libun hasaidus. And just as it's in the whitening of the hirsches and it's Chadash Bein Avram Zaken, that came and knew Avram Zaken. So even though before Avram was already Zaken, like the pasuk said before, Avram Soros Kenim, but he didn't have white hair. The white hair came about here of Avram Zaken. So the Rebbe says, Sorich Loimar, sheyesh chidush gam binyan bo bayomim. So coming in days, there's also a difference between the Baba Yomim, as it says before, And the Baba Yomim that it says over here that there is some change, just like there is a physical whitening of the hair, there's a Baba Yomim also a change. Kidl Kamon. So the Mamer over there explains Klolus Inyan, the Libun Hasidus. What is the general idea of the hairs becoming white? Shuam Shochas Bechinas Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. That represents the drawing down the level of the 13 attributes of mercy, which is his galus yud kimel tikune dikno. That is the revelation of the 13 strands of the beard of Lamaila. When you comes down to Avraham, that means the whitening, the getting the yud gimel tikune dikno. Shal Zeh Nemar, about those 13 strands of the beard, that means that the garment is like a white snow and the hair of his hair is like clean wool, basically meaning that the level of the level which is higher than Hishtalshlus comes down to Avram. Which means we extend something, we extend godliness to Avraham from beyond the Shtalshlus, and his hair gets white. He gets the Yud Kimel Tikkun Dikna, which is the level of higher than the Shtalshlus. And that was the novelty that was accomplished through Avraham to bring down the higher than the Shtalshlus. Ukebevur Baruch Hashem has explained at length over there in the Mamer. But there it explains what the whitening, the hair, what is the Avram Zaken, but what is the Chiddush of Baba Yom? What is the novelty and what is the idea that Avram is Baba Yomim at this point? Because already it's written before, and Avram Vesora Goimer Boim Bayomim, so it's already said they came with it. Now, Baba Yomim doesn't mean the end of days. This doesn't mean that when Baba Yom is coming in days that he reached the end of his days. Like we find, like in the Haftarah of the week, the Pasuk says, V'amelech David Zaken Baba Yomim. Over there, the Melech David became all Baba Yomim. The Kabbana was that Higam, over here, the intention also means Sheigil Seif Yomov, that he came to the end of his day. So in the Haftarah, Baba Yomim, by David, it means the end of his days. Legil Shivim, he came to the age of 70, which that was the age of David HaMelech. Sharei, but in our Pasuk, Baba Yomim doesn't mean the end of their life, because Shahab Pasuk Vavrom V'Soro Goimer Boim Bayomim, when it says before Yitzchak was born, Nemer Yoiser Mimem Shono Lifnei Pasuk Zed Parshasenu. That was said more than 40 years before the Pasuk of our Parsha Shenemar. Our Parsha is Be'ez HaShidduch, the Yitzchak v'Rivka. This took place at the match, at the marriage, at the Shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka, Shahoya Yitzchak ben Arboim. So Avraham, Yitzchak was 40 years when he married Rivka. That was before, when it says they were elder, that was before Yitzchak was born. That was said before Yitzchak was born. Hainu, which means Lifnei Shahoya Avraham ben Meyashana. That was before Avraham was 100 years, because Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak when he was 100 years, and when it says he was older, was before that. Avraham Chai Achar Kach, after that, from 100, He lived at Kuf Ayin Heishona. He died when he was 175. So you can't mean over there, Abraham's getting born by Yomim, they came to the end of the day. He lived another 75 years after, at least another 75 years. Same thing in our pasuk. That's the Baba Yomim, which is written before Yitzchak was born. When it says in our pasuk Baba Yomim, it doesn't mean that he reached the end of his day, end of his life. Ki hoya oz ben kuf mem shana. Because at that point, Abraham was 140 years old. Because Abraham, because Yitzchak was 40, and he gave birth to Abraham when he was 100 years old. To Yitzchak, Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak when he was 100. So now he's 40 years old. Yitzchak getting married, and then he lived for another 35 years because he lived to 175 and he was 140 over here. So it's not the end of his life when it says Avram Zaken, Baba Yomim, that he came end of life. The Lule Esav, and he actually had another 5 years. The Lule Esav Hoyachai Oidei Shona. Had it not been for Esav, it says the Eberster wanted to spare Avraham, the Agmas Nefesh, seeing Esav going out the Tar Bersero, so the Eberster took him away 5 years earlier. So Lule Esav Hoyachai Oidei Shona. He would have lived another 5 years. So it means when it says Avram Zok Baba Yomim, he would have lived another 40 years afterwards. Which is more than 35 years. And 35 years is more than a lifetime. So it would be more than half of the years of man, because we say the days of our lives are 70, and this would be additional at least 35, another half of a lifetime. So what is this Baba Yomim that came about after the Baba Yomim of before? Doesn't mean the end of the lifetime, because this was a much longer life afterward. Gam Tzorich Lahavin, we also need to understand Hakesher, the Inyan Baba Yomim. What's the connection of the idea of Baba Yomim L'Masha Kosuv V'Avram Zaken? What's the connection? Avram Zaken. Avram Zaken, we touched the Libun Sidus. And the fact that it says a second time, Baba Yomim, Bechrech Loimar, so we have to say, Avram Zaken, Baba Yomim, so Chidush V'Shayich L'Chidush, so that is a novelty, and it's connected to that novelty. Bavram Zoken Inyan Libun Hasidus Anal, to the idea of Bavram Zoken, which is the idea of the whitening of the hair that we talked about before. He would bring down the level of the Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna higher than Ishtalshlus, Yud Gimel Sarachimim higher than Ishtalshlus, and this is a Baba Yomim that is connected to that as well, as the Rebbe will continue to explain.